number 122. That's what she said. Recorded live Sunday, February 16th, live from iTechGear Central.
I begged you to take your meds.
I know you did.
There you go.
I never listen. Live from
Got the
iTechGear
dulcet
Central.
tones, man.
As I said, I'm Christopher Spera, the head crazy guy over here at iTechGear.org, joining us this week, bringing his dulcet tones over mostly to scold this time around, I think, probably rightfully so.
We're here.
Yes, the former contributing editor over Gear Diary and Pocket Now, and of course, editor here at iTechGear.org, Mr. Chris Gavula. How are you, sir?
What level of craziness was this tonight?
Okay.
I just want to make sure I understood. Yeah, doing great tonight. Doing great. You know, always happy to be here. And here we go again. We're ready for another one.
Absolutely, and of course, we also have manning the buttons over here at iTechGear.org.
In the sound booth.
Thank you. The former contributing writer over at Gear Diary and currently the host of the Linux Link Tech Show and living in the Retro Arcade podcast, Brother Joe McLaughlin. How are you, sir?
I'm doing quite well. It's finally, the snow decided it's going to melt from a week ago, so I decided to go
Ours is still here.
Tromp through the mud. So,
Ours is still here too.
yeah.
Well, ours is mostly gone, but there are some spots like most of my backyard where it's still there, but in my front it's I don't know. Maybe it's because my front lawn is a little bit southeast of my backyard. I don't know. But yeah. And of course, last but never ever least, the former co-owner of WUGNET Publications, Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. I don't know who made the weather gods mad at Tennessee, but we are getting tired of all the snow and cold weather. This is the South,
more than we did.
Mother Nature. This is the South. We're supposed to be comfortable in the winter.
Uh-huh.
I didn't sign up for this
foot
crap.
of snow in Virginia Beach.
I know, that's our old home, and 12 to 12 and a half, 13 inches. Wow.
Yeah, that's something over there
We
that
were
they got.
talking with old friends.
Yeah.
And
So says you.
So the Vision Pro.
it is winter. It is
Yeah,
winter, I guess.
And as we jump into it, yes, the Vision Pro a year in.
Yeah.
It's been a
Snazzy
year.
Labs. Yeah, Snazzy Labs has put out a video, and I think he shares a lot of the same concerns that we all have. What is it for? Apple is trying to make it all things to all people, and I don't think it is.
And we've
it doesn't
been
do any
saying
of them well.
you know, you got to have a killer app that helps define what it's going to be and what it's about. And where is it?
It's still not here.
Yeah, we've been saying that for a long time, but still, Apple themselves has not defined what that product is for. They have not.
I will say, bloggers, including this one, have certain use cases for it that are very good cases, and it's very good at those things. It's excellent at those things, but that still is nothing unique. That they, I mean, okay, it's got the best movie watching, experience at home. That's great. Is that enough to spend $3,500? Well, probably not.
No.
Right. Well, and not to
Probably
mention
not.
the fact, the best viewing, if it's tailored to the Vision Pro, so otherwise it's just a screen floating out in front of your eyeballs, which is like, you can do that with an iPod or like an HD TV.
I will tell you, having done that with the Meta Quest series,
right,
it's a little different experience. It's not just a screen hanging in front of you. You actually feel like you're sitting in the theater. So it's a little different.
Yeah.
So it's a little more compelling that way. But the resolution on the Vision Pro is way better than any of those devices. It's got probably the best resolution out there per eye. So, or pretty close.
The other things too, they said like
I get it.
Still, it's kind of dim to where it really needs to be. Even with the good quality screens it has, it's
I've heard the same thing. It's not that it's bad. It's not that it's bad, but there's better out there these days. Not in a VR headset. Not in a VR headset.
No, not in a VR headset. But
watching on your iPad is going to give you better nits and all that kind of thing.
Yep, exactly. So it's like Yeah, and I can't imagine yeah, you can do a virtual desktop thing with your windows floating all over the room if you want it, but who can work that way? I mean, and who wants to work
It's
with
not the
this heavy
easiest
thing
thing
on
to
your
do.
head?
It's
Well,
not
it's
the
going to
easiest
depend.
thing to do.
It's going to
Not,
depend on
not
the
to mention
resolution of the
you're
panel.
isolated. You're isolated when you have that puppy on.
That's true.
But there's some benefits to that. If you're trying to work, there's some benefits to that. I got to be honest with you. But
it
if the
resolution
resolution, but if the resolution on the pass through is fine for the keyboard and all, that's great. Okay. Again, I tried that with the Meta when they first started offering that kind of thing, and the resolution just wasn't good enough to make it workable.
Well,
but they claimed it was, but it
surprisingly.
wasn't. But the Vision Pro is supposed to be better at it. But again, I'm not sure they want to do it that way. But I get the benefits of possibly doing it that way for some people. I get that. But that, again, it's not a compelling use case. I mean, I'm sorry, it's just not enough.
Well, that's the biggest problem that the device has, is that really is no compelling use case for it right now. You can't spend $3,500 on a VR gaming machine. You really just can't.
Well, I think we all agree. I think we agree on a couple of things. One is the hardware in this thing, for what it is phenomenal. It really is good hardware. But and the problem is you can sense that there is a compelling case out there. Nobody just has figured out what it is. It should be.
See, and I don't buy that. I don't buy that.
I do.
If Apple can't tell us exactly what this thing is for after a year, all right? After 2 years, because you had hype before, all right?
Yep. True enough.
So if Apple can't tell us what this thing is supposed to be and what it's really good for,
but think about it.
Why have the device?
I think they were waiting on they were waiting for us to define it, and we can't.
I think so too. But here's the thing. Yeah. I think the same thing happened when the iPhone came out. The same thing happened when the iPad came out. I don't think Apple said this is what it's for. They didn't. They did not do that with the iPad. They put it out there, and everybody said,
"You're right." They did,
and everybody kind of figured out what it was.
They had
the difference is all of us went out and bought that first iPhone. Bingo, money,
and figured out what it was for us.
And we couldn't do that. $3,500 is not.
No, and the early things that we did when we did buy that early iPhone or that early iPad, those things that we did defined the use case, and it changed how Apple presented the product and what they did with it. So
that's true.
I think they're thinking we're going to do that this time, and we can't do that this time.
No, because we don't know what the hell it's supposed to be.
No, but we didn't know before. What I'm saying is we didn't know.
I understand.
And what Chris is saying, the app is not there to drive us to figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's nothing
I don't think, again,
that's compelling. There's nothing that's compelling people to go out.
But again, you could argue when the iPad came out, there was nothing compelling to drive you there either.
No. Flava Flav was there with the clock faces on this thing and hanging it around his neck and stuff. No, seriously.
If that's what drove you, I'm really sorry for you.
That's right. And,
no, it didn't. It didn't. But because I remember all I called it back in the day, it was nothing more than a Jive phone, right? A giant iPhone.
And when it first came out, it wasn't much more than that. When it first came out,
true.
That's true.
It wasn't much more than that.
But very shortly, we all said that.
Right.
And what the driver was, we all said, well, we really want to use this, but the apps don't really take advantage of the screen real estate. That was what we said.
And it didn't really evolve until iPad OS.
And that's what
not
Apple
entirely
changed.
true. That's not entirely true. I do believe that the compelling reason for it was discovered prior to the issuance of iPad OS. I think iPad OS kind of cemented that and really gave it
but it was people
a more
like us
directed
on.
focus. But this one was but the iPad was already defined in terms of a note-taking tool, in terms of
but not initially.
A light web browsing tool.
Not initially.
No, it wasn't.
Initially, it was people like us who bought it and said,
we could use it for this, we could use it for that, and we could use it for
but
the
back then it was powered by an iPhone version of Safari.
But we said if it didn't only did this and only did that, it would be great. And Apple listened, and Apple changed the product.
Yeah, they did.
That hasn't happened with this product. We have not had the user base saying, gee, if only it did this. Nobody's done that. Now, I'm not blaming Apple for that. What I'm saying is it's wrong for us to say Apple should tell us what it's for, because the reality is they never have. None of these manufacturers ever have.
All right. If I give you that point, that's fine. All right. Let's put that just to the side for a second. Go for it.
All right. But there was someone to tell them back then. Now there's only X number of users, and the number's not very big.
The problem the problem that you have is this. All right. The users don't know what they can do with it yet. All right. After a year. All right. Nobody really has a clue. And if Apple isn't getting that information from its user base, it needs to come up with or pull something out of its hat and say, hey, what about this? Have you thought of it? We could use it for,
but they never have.
And I think here's a really great idea. Your Vision Pro, it can do this. Yeah. And then push that and then make your user.
Yeah, but again, I argue they never have.
What about?
They never have with any of their products.
Yeah, I understand that. But the problem with this thing is that it's too damn expensive for doing nothing. It's too damn expensive to take the iPad off the physical screen and put it out in front of you. All right,
I would agree with that, but it does more than that, but not enough. I was
not to mention the fact that the default. I mean, they had to go. This surprised me when I watched the video about ResMed. That ResMed, who makes CPAP supplies, makes a head strap for it. It's available on this Apple Store. The ResMed Contour head strap, which is $119. It's like, so it's like, yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things where I think that the head strap thing is going to be a very contentious thing. Some people aren't going to like the default. Some people want another one.
You know what? Again, I make the same argument with Meta. Meta didn't know what to do or how to make a decent head strap either, and the ones that everybody buys are a third-party one. It's the same issue. Kids, I got news for you. Again, we can't hold Apple to blame for not knowing how to make a head strap when the people who've been doing it a lot longer didn't know how to make a freaking head strap either.
Yeah, yep. I had a question that ResMed actually knows how to make one.
Well, I would go down there with you
too, but
I'd go there with you. Yeah, I'd go there with you.
Because they're not the most comfortable things in the world. Why do you think I want to get rid of mine?
There you go. Exactly.
Pretty awful.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it's better than the alternative.
But I do like the fact that Apple did reach out to somebody to kind of develop one, rather than go with the fact that they knew theirs didn't work very well. So,
we don't necessarily know that they did that. Or
what I read was they had done some kind of partnership with them to get it done. That's why it's in the store. I don't know that for sure. That's what I thought I read.
Right. Yeah, because the one thing I thought it could have been was maybe ResMed had some people that bought them internally, and then they said, hey, we make straps. Let's make a better one.
And we have heard some odd, I'll call them corner cases, where this thing is being used to help with surgeries and things like that. We hear these corner cases, these high-end corner cases. But that is not enough, turn that into something that you and I can use.
Right.
You can, right? What does that look like? No, we don't, there's nothing there. It's not there. That's what's missing. Again, we've said it before. They refer to it as a use case for the product. Generically, I agree with that, but it's more about where's the freaking killer app? Where is the killer app to make us want to do this thing?
And it's not out there.
It's not out there. You're absolutely right about that.
It's not.
Absolutely
and that's
true.
And that's why I'm saying, okay, well, if I don't know what to do with it, if I can't figure out what to do with it, why isn't Apple telling me?
Right. Again, I don't know that that's their job, but that's,
it's their
again,
product.
They never have. Why would they start now?
It?
Right. What would you do with an iPad when you first had one? You didn't know it.
I can't do anything with it. I can't get one.
Well, that's the bigger problem. It's now, hang on. You've just changed the focus. From I don't know what to do with it to I can't get one. Those are different things.
I can't get one because it's too no. You left and you took the long.
He can get one. He just doesn't have the disposable income for it.
Bingo, bingo. And that's where I'm going. Thank you, Joel. The point here is that I can't get one because it's too freaking expensive. It's too freaking expensive for something that doesn't provide any kind of it's not a solution to any problem that I have. It's not a solution to a problem that I have. So why spend the $3,500 if I don't know what the widget is going to do for me, if I don't know what this product is going to provide me with, where the value's at, why do I want to go out and spend the money?
You know something, Chris, you just made a very good point there. We don't, I mean, we buy a lot of high-end toys, all of us, but we always buy them with a purpose. I mean, I buy something because it's going to do something for me. This damn thing does nothing for me. It might for Chris G, it might for Joel. I don't know, but it doesn't for me. I will never know.
My argument is when the iPad first came out in 2010, what was the use case?
I don't know. I tried it and didn't like it 4 or 5 times until iPad OS.
Right.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going with this.
I had one a first generation iPad. I had a 32 gig, which was the mid-range or midpoint device.
It was 16 to start with. Yep.
16, 32, and I think 64 is where it topped out at the time. Right. And that's back in 2010. The issue that I wanted it to watch movies on. All right. Because it had a nice big screen at 10 or so inches. And it was really nice to be able to go ahead and watch movies on. And at that point, I could do I could still do my web browsing. I could still do my Word doc or web-based email or web-based Word or Office documents. And the problem, well, there were other problems that resulted from those use cases that weren't solved immediately, but eventually they were. So,
but until you bought it and until you made those statements that said, I really needed to do this, I really needed to do that, Apple didn't ever come forward and say, here's how you should use the thing.
And
ever.
Correct. But again, they're not getting that input or information from their users.
I understand that. So but again,
help us out. My point is, okay, Apple, help me out. Why do I want this thing?
Again, I don't know that it's reasonable to ask them that. I'm not sure that it's reasonable to go there.
No.
At this point, but we can disagree on that. That's cool.
My point is, I hear you, but at the same time, if they can't tell me what it's good for, it's a non-starter.
Well, that may be the case. I have a feeling this is, again, and I said this last year when this thing came out, that my suspicion was this sucker was going to be a slow burn at best until somebody figured it out. And the reason is because of the limited market for this thing. So it was going to be a slow burn, and that maybe at some point somebody's going to come up and go, what you could do is, insert here, and there we go. And all of a sudden it takes off.
Maybe, I don't know. But
I don't either. For sure.
But at $3,500, it's a deep downstroke to jump into this platform when nobody knows it's going to do.
Let's be fair.
Interestingly enough,
it's no more popular today than it was a week after it launched.
That's true.
To be fair, the hardware that it's in it is definitely most likely worth the $3,500, especially when we're charging $2,000 for a single folding phone. Okay, so the hardware that it's in it is probably worth it, but that doesn't make it worth it to you as a user.
Well, let me just say this: there's no argument there, all right. But at the same time, I want to point out, and we're going to move on after this. I want to point out that even Snazzy Labs, who does a nice long 15-minute thing, all right, their last point is, what does Apple want this to be? All right.
There you go.
All right. What does Apple want this to be?
Apple, and if hardcore Apple fan he is, I mean, nobody likes
Apple. Is he? I'm not familiar with him.
Yeah.
He buys everything Apple.
Does he? Okay.
But
even bought the trash can.
The biggest thing here, though, is if
he's the one person, huh?
If this guy doesn't know, and if most users don't know, and if Apple's not telling us, I give this thing another year, and then I say they pull it.
Yep. We'll see what they do. I mean, they
seriously.
could.
Seriously.
It depends on what their game plan is. I know we hear that there's, a cheaper version, but it probably won't be till 2027-ish. So they may hang it around.
if they pull it at the beginning of 26, I don't think you're ever going to see the cheaper version. You won't.
I would agree. I would totally agree. If they pull it, then you're right. We won't.
It's done. All right, but because at this point, the developers aren't jumping on. Nobody knows what to do with this thing. So, but you know what's interesting though.
Here's what they do know how to do with.
Here's what they do know how to do with, right?
And here's something that they will jump on.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like. The Apple iPhone 16e. Larry, this thing came out after the events. Just was it last week that they did this? And
yeah.
They're sort of comparing it, or at least Apple Insider and 9 to 5 Mac are, right? They're sort of comparing it to the Apple iPhone 16 series. And Apple Intelligence, the 16E is the entryway into Apple Intelligence at a lower cost. What do you think?
Well, what I think is if you look back to the genesis of the SE, it was always a phone that would never, ever please any one of us. But it would please enough people that a lot of folks bought it. It had a low entry price point.
Right.
But this is Apple's very first foray into making that phone good enough to use with all of its intelligent AI stuff. Additionally, if you start right at the top, it's got a notch. So yeah, it doesn't have the island yet, but it does have a notch. Supports Face ID just as good as your island camera does, or your phone. It's got a USB-C port. It's got the action button instead of the mute switch. But what it does, it's got all of the CPU features and the core neural engine to make it support Apple Intelligence. So if you look at this upside a 16, not a Pro, just the 16, there's not a lot of difference, folks. I mean, there really, really isn't.
Not a little bit crappier
The camera is a big one.
Yeah.
Yep. It's, I don't know. I think, and we're going to talk about this later, but notably, this phone is the first Apple phone that features the Apple's new C1 modem. The first time they've gotten away from Qualcomm. Not that Qualcomm's bad, it's just that Apple's always wanted to do this. And they figured if they did it with this phone, this is just my speculation, if it fails, it won't be nearly as catastrophic as if they...
I would agree with you. That's the way to slide it in the back door, so to speak.
The way they're doing
see what it does.
100%. Let's try
see how
it
it flies.
I think with the budget iPhone and see how it goes.
Yeah, but it's got a great battery life, guys. This thing for a 6.1 inch phone, 6 hours longer than the 11, the iPhone 11, and 12 hours longer than any other SE. So, and it's got messages via satellite, emergency SOS, and Find My via satellite. So it's got all the bells and whistles.
And it does support Apple Intelligence. It does support Apple Intelligence. So
if it had an island, I would probably buy it. I really would.
Right.
Well,
because I like the camera. I love the camera on this thing.
Except that it doesn't do as good a job as the 16 or the 16 Pro.
It probably doesn't, but my use case is take a picture and leave. I don't need the granular. I don't need that. Nope.
The other thing is the charging is a little slower on this thing.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It's not got as quite a good a charging going on.
Does this thing have that new action button?
It has the action button, but it doesn't have the camera control button.
Okay, that's the one I'm talking about, the camera control button.
No, it does not have the camera control button.
All right, so okay.
It probably doesn't need it because the camera is so...
It also is using the A18, just like the iPhone 16, but it's only using a 4-core versus a 5-core GPU.
Okay.
So
true.
So the GPU
it's trimmed a little.
and the neural engine, if you will,
which are usually throwaways out of QA anyway for the other version.
Right. It's probably a binned chip of some kind. You're right.
So that's at least an idea that okay, here's now something we can do.
But the bottom line is it's a darn good phone, and a lot of people are going to buy it. They're going to make money with it. They will.
I think that the complaint I've seen is that it's higher priced than it's what it's replacing. However, I would argue that here's what's happened. They instead of kind of upselling the old model. What they're doing now is bringing you down from the current model a little
Perfectly
bit.
said.
And I think
Absolutely
that's
correct.
perfectly okay. I think the price point to me is perfectly okay.
$100 for what they threw into this piece of hardware is great, I think.
No, I think you're right. I totally agree with you. I think for some people this is going to be a really great choice. For other folks like ourselves, we're going to go, but we're not the target.
Right. For folks like us with only a single camera lens, right? And then the bin-based cast-off processors with, one less functional GPU core, right? It's not necessarily for, mainstream iPhone users or even pros, but for your everyday, I want a newer
it's got a good
screen.
iPhone. I mean, it's got a decent screen on it. Again, you give up a little on the camera, but your screen is great. So if your use case doesn't involve taking pictures or taking video, you're fine.
Or
as far as I can tell.
But you don't need the professional quality 4K high super duper high resolution photos and movies. You're going to be fine.
Right.
It looks like there's a little less in the connectivity zone as well. Doesn't quite
with
have
the
all
Apple.
those methods,
so moving into
it's
Larry,
fine.
now the some of the C1 modem differences. It does not currently support millimeter wave based 5G.
Oh, that wasn't what I was thinking
of. But before you go there, you got to back up, Chris, and look at something. If you look at what the carriers are telling you today, and they're saying we probably screwed up. The world does not need MM5G. They don't need it. Every carrier out there. I mean, in all honesty, could I live without it? What's the difference in a phone? What's the difference in having 400 or 500 megabits downlink versus 160? Nothing. Literally nothing.
Especially when we consider the coverage on that was pretty crappy.
It was.
Millimeter wave, you really needed to have line of sight. To the tower, number one. It will not go. It will not go through drywall or wood or any kind of serious concrete. So you really need an open line of sight to the tower, and then even then, you got to hold your mouth right and hope there isn't a stiff breeze, because
you know what, you may be saying that in jest, but let me tell you something. I made a move recently of 1.5 miles from my old house. In my driveway at the old house, I was getting 850 to 880 megabits downlink on my phone using speed test. Okay. But I was a quarter of a mile away physically looking at the top of the tower. But I move a mile and a half away and I'm dead. I can't even use it.
Again, that's the problem. I don't think they didn't predict when they started to deploy this thing. I don't think it occurred to them that the range was so freaking limited. How many towers would you have to put in place in order to get any kind of coverage?
That's what the carriers are saying. We'd have to put towers everywhere, and we can't.
Yeah, and it's not reasonable. They should have figured out that the technology just didn't support that kind of.
Nope.
I think they thought maybe there'd be advancements in it. I don't know what they were thinking, but it didn't happen.
It didn't.
So there you go.
And correct. It did not. I'm hearing a lot.
By the way, we didn't deploy this anywhere else in the world, really. I mean,
sorry about that.
We really didn't get it anywhere else in the world. I mean, not in any kind of real way.
No,
so
and
not a
the
surprise.
The biggest issue they've got is that there's so much riding on the mid-range frequencies now as it is.
Yeah.
That a lot of folks are saying, get over it. We're going to have to figure out some way of getting this the higher end.
But performance aside, there's still two really big reasons that Apple did this. It's a double win. First of all, if you look at Qualcomm's fee structure, Apple's long considered that to be unfair. When Apple bought modem chips, it had to pay twice, once for the chip and then once again for the royalty of putting the use of that technology into their phone. And they said that it was a double dipping thing.
Right. So they're tired of Qualcomm double dipping on the license as well as a royalty fee to actually use.
Yeah.
But the other thing, Apple says one of the biggest complaints they hear from their phone users is, give me more battery life. I mean, these are people, the road warriors, that really need to use this thing 14 hours a day.
Right.
And so now this thing sucks up about 1/10 of the power or of the battery, I mean, of a Qualcomm chip. So there's another win. And so it doesn't support Wi-Fi 7. Who really cares? Are you going to go out tomorrow and buy a $1,400 mesh
Nobody
motor or
is.
router because it has Wi-Fi 7 in it?
Right. It also doesn't have the ultra wideband or the wideband stuff that they were doing supporting, and a couple other little things. I wouldn't call that a big loss for this thing.
Although they're saying that next year or the next iteration of this chip, it may be there.
No, the carriers have always said that 5G, the fast stuff was meant to be rolled out, big airports, big shopping centers, and places like that.
Yeah, and the millimeter wave was generally done for places like stadiums, which had high, straight line of sight, but large numbers of people.
Right,
that's what they were looking for, and really, I don't think you're going to lose it that much.
And the stadiums didn't jump on that, so
they did not.
They did not. I mean, it's really a lot like the millimeter wave is a lot like Wi-Fi. Yeah. You really need uninterrupted or unencumbered line of sight to the.
I think Apple's looking at this, Chris. I think they're looking at the fact that carriers are feeling, they're limited support to that band. So they feel comfortable in launching this C1.
I'm going to step it back even one more layer in the sense that if you look at a lot of forums complaining about service and not, the various carriers, a lot of times, even the recommendation now is even regular 5G isn't that great, that you do better jumping back to 4G LTE. In some cases, you do a much better job of getting better throughput in some cases, depending on where you are. And so this is just another layer of all that. 5G as a whole has not been quite as successful as everybody would hope, but we kind of got pushed into it anyway. But it really overall has not been the big leap that it was supposed to be.
It wasn't as big a move as when we moved to 4G. That's for
from
sure.
3G
or millimeter. Right, guys. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so this is just kind of, I would call it a pullback of a recognition that it hasn't been what they hoped it would be, at least in terms of the millimeter wave portion of this. But I think the next tweaks will probably be to try to improve what 5G itself and as a core is.
I think for our listeners, all three of them, I think that the bottom line is if you're thinking about buying one of these things and you're a little bit hesitant because it doesn't have millimeter wave, no, go ahead and buy it.
Absolutely.
It's a good phone. It really is.
Yep. Well, there's one caveat though. If you're a fan of MagSafe, you do not get that on this phone.
That's also true.
Better read the fine print, Joel. That was the initial one. Yeah. Now they're saying several people have made MagSafe work.
Well, what I was going to say, what I understood, Larry, was that people
not as good, but
my understanding is they didn't make MagSafe work directly. Correct me if I'm wrong. That they were able to do it via a case. By a MagSafe case, they were able to sort of make that work.
It was like a hack,
and it was a hack, and it's only 7.5 watts. So,
and that would be a showstopper really for me because I love the nightstand mode at night. I turn it sideways. I love
the key charging. The key charging is only 7.5 watts anyway, whereas the MagSafe is 25. So, take it for what it's worth. 7.5 is what you're going to get. Regardless,
but it's also $1,100 versus $600.
I'm with you. But again, for what the audience is for this thing, I think this is a great value proposition for the audience that
couldn't
would
agree
want
more.
One of these. So
agreed. Well, okay, so I'm going to go ahead then and move us on to our mobile Linux segment, and there's some interesting things in here this week. One of the most interesting things, and I was not aware that this was even on HP's radar, but apparently they picked up the AI company called Humane, and they're the makers of that AI pin that, or that Star Trek like badge where you tap the badge and it chirps and you can talk to an AI and they have it do things, right? And now that pin now no longer works.
And I would argue it was not a success ever.
No, MKBHD said it was the worst product he's ever reviewed.
Take what he said with a grain of salt, but it isn't a good product. That's true.
No, it's not. It never really has been. But I didn't even know that they were, A, that the company was on the block, and B, I didn't know HP was interested.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination of things, isn't it? And let's make it clear what they did. They didn't buy it to sell the pin.
No,
they're going to retire the pin if it hasn't already been killed in that sense.
It's done.
But what HP acquired was the technologies involved and the people.
Right.
That's essentially what they acquired is this, and so that might be a good investment. I don't know for what they spent. We'll see, I guess. But HP does have a habit, however, of picking up oddball technologies and just sort of rolling them into things,
or not doing a thing with them,
or not doing a thing with them, as the case may be. You're right.
Right. Well,
we don't really know.
A lot of companies do that. They may go ahead and they may buy some IP just simply to retire it because they don't want anybody else to have it.
Well, remember, right. HP did an odd thing. Remember a number of years back with Palm, and then they turned it around and didn't know what to do with WebOS, so they spun it on and sort of sold it. So now television makers like LG use it as their OS.
Well, there were a couple of phones.
So
there were a couple of phones that used specifically WebOS, and this is, of course, during the
not from HP
days, but
not from HP directly. It was a Palm, and they acquired all that. So what I'm saying is they acquired these things, and then how they spit it back out may not be the way we expect them to spit it back out. We really don't know what they're thinking, but it was interesting that they acquired it. It is interesting. I think they paid $116 million. I think that's a relatively low amount. For the technology. Again, remember what you're getting here. You're getting the technologies, not the...
For Imran Chowdhury and Bethany, I'm going to slaughter this one. Bongiorno. All right.
Or Bongiorno.
All right.
Yeah.
Bongiorno. It was a nice payday. All right. And
absolutely.
I think that's really who they were after, because HP is looking for a way, kind of sort of like Microsoft, but hopefully not really, all right, to integrate AI into their hardware, right?
Yes, they are.
And that's why they bought
I think so.
Humane, right? Is not because they wanted the pin or even how they tried to integrate AI into that pin, but because they believe that they're smart enough to expound on that, and perhaps with HP's larger resources and bigger pocketbook, they may be able to go ahead and, expound on that and find a way of getting a decent implementation of AI into their hardware, right? And Beatrice Nolan, the author of the Yahoo Finance article, she quotes HP saying, "This investment will rapidly accelerate our ability to develop a new generation of devices that seamlessly orchestrate AI requests both locally and in the cloud." All right. So
there you go. I do want to point out that this article actually originally appeared on Fortune. Yahoo Finance picked it up as a republish.
Nice.
So just want to make it clear that it came from Fortune.
Awesome.
Thank
you for
that. But yeah, I think again, I think the short form is the technology, the pin's dead. The technology lives on with HP in some form that we don't really know yet.
Yeah, we'll be dead in 5 more days.
Yeah, but the point is they're winding it down. They're ending it.
Right.
It has not been, and it has not been a successful product. It really
no. And even though the company Humane raised $230 million from prominent investors, and there needs to be some payday for them, and that includes OpenAI CEO Sam Altman and Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff. There's still a decent payday in for company founders, and there's still
and they did
payday for those employees that went along with.
And they did some interesting things, along the way. It just wasn't successful, that combination of things that they did. That's all.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that there weren't some interesting things.
And we might not know exactly what they're buying this for. I mean, some of the best known little buys like that. When Microsoft bought Acompli and Sunrise Calendar, everybody said, "Oh, you wasted your money." And now Outlook for mobile iOS is the biggest thing in the App Store. So
that's
what it became. You never know.
right?
You never know.
And just to pile on a little bit, Chris, to what you had said about how the product was not well received.
Let's pile on.
Marquis Brownlee, a
yeah.
popular,
This is what Joel said.
The reviewer over at Popular Tech, called it one of the worst products he had ever reviewed. That it was slow, unreliable, had terrible battery life, and didn't do anything better than a smartphone.
Yeah, Joel had kind of said that a few minutes ago. The same thing. He quoted him, and that's exactly what he has said. Don't always agree with him, but he's right in this case. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, so let's go ahead and move on to something that maybe is a little bit closer to home. So, Joel, you're trying to share a playlist, or more importantly, you want
my goodness,
your friends while you're hiking along. You all want to be singing the same song, right? So you want to be able to do like a listening party, if you will, instead of a
so to speak. Yeah, because that's one of my pet peeves, and I've done it. I've seen this done. Like I go hiking up at High Banks Metro Park, right, and there was a group of teenagers,
right,
running through the woods with a Bluetooth speaker on, which is, by the way, don't do that.
Completely rude. Oh, and when they do that, have you had them do that on an airplane? It's even worse. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and it actually, my son used to do it at bowling. But his team had no problem with it, but other teams did too. But it's so how do you listen? How do you get a group of people who are on an event together or working out together, listening to the same track over headphones? And that's difficult. You can't do it. Obviously,
you compare the headphones to the same device, but that's about all you can do, right?
Maybe not. Maybe not. Because I've had experiences, like I know with my Android devices that, say I have two sets of headphones with me. I'm using one, and the other one's like in like a fanny pack or backpack, and all of a sudden I jostle, and one of those earbuds, like say for example these ones here, they're my A60s.
Sure.
These loosen up just enough so they come on and they Bluetooth over to your phone, and then all of a sudden the music switches from the ones in your ears to the ones that's in your pocket. All right. So it will not go to both at the same time, at least on Android. I haven't tried that with iOS. But I know you can do like multiple speakers. I've seen that, like multiple speakers, because they're usually designed that way. Depending on which ones you get. Say you get two UE booms, and you can basically make one the left channel, one the right channel. Of course, that's a speaker. It doesn't really help me out here, So I haven't really found anything, to be honest. I've looked around. The best I can find is you can share the same playlist, and y'all can use the same playlist, and you can try and start it at the same time. But of course, if somebody pauses it, they're going to be behind, stuff like that. So,
I do know that with modern iPhones, you can do multiple Bluetooth audio devices hanging off the iPhone. I don't know if you can do the same thing with Android. I would have assumed so. Well, I guess, but you can do it on an iPhone.
Keep in mind too, though, that if you had one phone doing all of that, then if that person gets a call, that's going to interrupt everybody else.
Absolutely true. But you know what? There's no use case you can avoid all of that. It depends on who's driving the playlist. I mean, they're driving the audio, so they're going to win. Always going to win.
Apple, Google, make this happen somehow, because that would be so useful in a lot of situations. So
right, because not everybody, especially in a car. What if your kids want to listen to something? Right. And they, and hey, listen to this, instead of having to pass over one of the AirPods. Right. And so you've got half of, one kid's got it in his left ear. The other kid's got it in their right ear. Instead of doing something like that, or, stretching the wired headphones, if you're still using those, or passing over a set of headphones to somebody else so they can listen to it. Why not give us the ability to share the audio of a single song amongst multiple people?
But you can. On an iPhone, you can.
Well, on an iPhone, you can, but you can't do it across platform.
But you can't do anything across platforms. I guess that's going to be the challenge, right? And I would like to see them all get together on a couple. We've all talked about this before. There's a number of services we would love to see shared across platforms that aren't.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I would. There's no doubt.
We have this conversation almost weekly, don't we?
Very true. Very, very true.
Someday there will be audio nirvana, but not today.
There will be audio. Well, it's interesting because Bluetooth was supposed to set some of these standards, and guess what? It didn't exactly.
No.
So, there you go.
No.
A standards committee that didn't set standards? I can't imagine.
And people wonder why people complain about losing the wired option, because the wired option, you can buy adapters that will drive 2 sets of headphones.
Well, you could argue. You could argue again using an iPhone or even using an Android. You can hook a USB splitter to those things and still do that if you really wanted to. There are devices out there that will do that. Third-party devices.
You can.
That'll do that for you. So maybe that's your answer. But then you'd be hanging on wired again, right? You have to be within a few feet of each other or dragging it for so long.
Or you could do you could possibly do a Bluetooth adapter that plugged into the jack, because there are those. Or actually another alternative would be you have one phone driving a FM transmitter, and everyone had Walkman.
Well, that's a possibility. Wasn't that an interesting idea? That gets to be kind of awkward and interesting, doesn't it? Now
it does. It does. There's no real great way to do that, because really,
gotcha.
The way we used to I don't want to say the way we used to do that back in the 80s was radio. All listen to the same radio station at the same time. Technically,
are you using the R word? Stop using the R word.
Yeah, radio. Because radio was really good at doing that. They had thousands to millions of people all listening to the same track at the same time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been really cool.
Either, it's like, because the radio was the true streaming technology. I mean, just think about that, but whatever.
And it was the first.
I agree.
So.
Samsung.
Anyway.
Well, no, actually, the first would have been wired technologies before radio, but yes, we did have those first.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's interesting. Sometimes the old ways were the best, huh?
Sometimes, but there's some really cool new things that are coming around.
There are.
For some people.
Okay.
For some folks. Unfortunately, we have no idea where the hell some of those folks are actually living. And what I'm referring to is Samsung's new trifold phone, right? I don't know that does it really have a name. I know that the one that it kind of sort of is competing with, the Huawei Mate XT, but the Samsung Galaxy Trifoldable is all that I really kind of know it.
It hasn't been actually announced. It's still.
Well, I thought
it's all but announced.
Well, yeah, it was all but confirmed in the January.
Yeah, it's this is still through tipsters. It's still technically rumor, but with Samsung, these things usually turn out to be true. Usually.
True,
right? Google,
right? Same with Google. They leak this stuff themselves. So what's interesting is that it's not going to be available everywhere, right? Number one, and number two, it's only going to be available in quote unquote certain markets to be named later. All right.
I always love that useless phrase.
Yeah, a player to be named later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and from what I understand, the first run of this thing is going to be a very limited run, and because Samsung doesn't really expect to see a huge amount of demand for this, because this sucker is going to be expensive.
So let's step back for just a second, because we can use the Huawei Mate XT as a good example.
We can,
and this kind of ties back almost to what we were talking about when we talked about the Vision Pro. The price point on the Huawei is almost $3,000
US. Yes,
on the Huawei,
$3,000 US. Yes,
so and if you see they are on eBay for selling as much as $5,000.
Exactly. So what I'm getting at is that this Samsung Trifold, if you take the current Samsung Fold pricing and even just or add 50%. Even if you just add 50%, you're getting up in that ballpark again, kids. And you have to ask yourself, who is going to pay that for this device?
Well,
I don't know.
So the Samsung Galaxy Fold, I think, is like 18, isn't it like 1899?
It's $1,900, something like that.
Yeah. All
yeah,
right.
it's
So
in that ballpark.
If you were to go ahead and add 50%, add another $900 onto that, or so. I mean, you're up to $2,700, which after tax, there's your $3,000, right?
I know, that's my point. It's like, so who's going to pay $3,000 for a phone, for a folding phone? Another folding
tablet,
phone
for a folding tablet that can double as a cell phone.
I mean, we have to understand, and we talked, Chris, you and I especially had talked about this in the very, 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 very early stages of the folding market, when Samsung had a real dud on their hands for the first release.
The first Fold
which was a piece of crap. And we talked about this then and said, this is always going to be a bit of a niche market because it's expensive and these things are delicate. Guess what happens with the trifold?
So you go back to the same kind of thing. You've got an extra fold that you've got to deal with, right? And at least one extra, quote unquote, one extra screen, right?
Now, I think this is cool because it puts the possible perspective on the open device closer to that of an iPad mini rather than the square shape of a current foldable when you open it.
Right.
So I like that. I like that notion, but it's going to be a hard sell until the prices come down, and they may not. We thought they would come down on the foldables, and they never really did.
And they haven't really. The
not the way we thought they would.
Open is really the only one at MSRP on that is $16.99, but OnePlus is actually selling it for $12.99.
You can get the Google down there a little bit in that $14.99, $13.99 range sometimes too. So
right, but
Google
OnePlus is selling theirs for $12.99.
I know, but the point is, some of those are coming down a little bit, but not the way they need to. Not yet.
No, if they want to make folding devices mainstream, they need to be where your standard candy bars are right now at about $1,000 to $1,100, and that's about it.
Now, my suspicion is going forward, if tariffs hold, we're not going to see these prices drop anytime soon. If that's the case, we'll see how this plays out. But again, I'm not expecting any price drops in these things anytime soon. Possibly price hikes in these things. Who knows? But the point is,
I think people have more disposable income than you think. They really do. If you look around at the toys and the things that people buy, the average person spends more money than they want to tell you they spend. They really do.
They do. But this is still a lot of money to ask them to spend. This is really getting out of control there.
Especially
I can buy a good used car for this.
Especially for a tablet, right? Especially for a tablet, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can turn around. You keep in mind, I can turn around and buy a candy bar phone and a tablet together and still pay less than this.
Yeah, you can.
So, would I don't know. I don't know. Is it worth the convenience? And let's keep in mind the Samsung device is, at least in the current rumors, is not going to be all that thin compared to the Huawei, for example. So
no, it's correct. Even
it doesn't
the Galaxy Fold 5, 6, or 7 isn't all that.
No, they're not. And so you have to go, okay, this starts to feel a little awkward. Is this what we want to do? I mean, where's the convenience? Because it was supposed to be all about convenience. Is it convenient if it's still big and bulky in my pocket? Maybe not. Don't know.
But I'm going to bet it still has the same quality as like the Ultra, the 25 Ultra or something.
And the 25 Ultra has kind of been a yawner. It hasn't really generated much excitement. But I do think a trifold's a great idea. For some folks, I do like the form factor in terms of perspective, getting the correct perspective in a tablet. But I do think it's going to depend on execution. And Samsung's already said the crease will still be it'll still be there. And it doesn't look like it's going to be improved. And isn't there one side of it that has kind of a line through it on the one, the divider, one of the screens? I don't remember. I recall in the early prototypes what it looked like.
On the Samsung,
there was one. There was one model. It may not be the Samsung, and I apologize if I'm wrong on that.
So from what
two of the panels fold together, but one had kind of off.
From what I remember seeing from the Huawei Mate XT. All right. The way this thing was folded up, when the accordion was opened up, it was all one contiguous screen.
It is on the Huawei. It is, although the one screen is slightly different, but you can't really tell that.
Right.
But I'm trying to remember on the Samsung if that was also the case, or if they were. I think it folded a different way, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And so I thought that made it look a little different, but I don't recall. I apologize. I just don't remember. But it should be interesting. I mean, it's an interesting device.
Right. So it's going to have so this device, according to Samsung, will have the same crease as the Galaxy Fold 6.
Nah.
All right. It will share some design improvements from the Galaxy Fold 7, mainly for the frame, but it's going to have the same display type, right? Just longer, as the Galaxy Fold 6. All right. There should be cameras in the center of the phone, meaning that the middle screen will feature cameras for a more centered photography angle, and it'll feature the same ringed camera design as the Z Fold 7.
Yeah, I could have sworn, and I could be wrong, that their folding was different. And so, in other words, the outside screen kind of folded backwards. And so rather than the two folding into each other, and I could have sworn that the far left-hand panel, you see like a frame between the two left-hand panels, but you don't between the right-hand panels. I thought there was something like that. So it's kind of
sort of like the Surface.
Kind of, yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
which was not a bad foldable in and of itself.
No, those first two panels, and then the third panel is connected as one screen.
That actually makes sense, Chris, because that way they can make that the open front face of the phone when it was folded.
Correct. And so I think it was slightly different for that panel. But let's see what it looks like when they actually release it. Anything we say is speculation. They haven't
right. No,
done
and there
is
unfortunately, even though we're citing an article from Phone Arena here, there's not a lot of detail on design issues or whatever's. So there's not a lot of details here.
But I do think trifolds are an interesting place to go. I just think we're starting to get to that price point where you start to compare the utility for the price you're paying, and
you don't, and it's not there, You're better off with a tablet
or a regular foldable
or a regular phone. All right. So anyway,
maybe we'll see. We'll see where people go with this.
And speaking of foldables,
where people aren't going, you mean?
That you aren't going to get. More bad news for Oppo Find N5 fans. If anybody in Europe was hoping to get a hold of this device, you ain't going to see it. You ain't going to get it there.
So I think so we talked last week about the fact that the OnePlus is not going to release the Open 2 here.
Right.
I think we chatted about that. The Find N5 is Oppo's cognate to that. It's the same device, essentially pretty much the same physical device. The Oppo Find series kind of lined up with the OnePlus series, and slight difference in the OS and things like that. But the point is, we all kind of hoped that when we heard that the OnePlus wasn't going to release, that maybe Oppo would release the Find N, and it is technically supposed to be a worldwide version that they're releasing theoretically. But yeah, the rumor is that they ain't going to show up in Europe. It ain't going to show up here in North America. And so the only way you're going to get it is to import the thing.
Right.
That's the story.
So it's unfortunate, but true.
And it's getting good reviews other than its camera. Other than its camera, it gets good numbers. It gets good everything. But its camera's a little disappointing, but okay.
Yeah, but it's apparently the Find N5 is only going to be released in limited markets. And it'll be the Asian markets. I don't even know if they're going to get this in India, right?
That's been a question too. I don't recall seeing clearly.
Right. Instead,
but it's supposed to be global. That's what they say.
It's quote unquote, it's a global launch of the Find N5.
Unlike the OnePlus or the Find N3, which was the predecessors.
Right.
Unlike those, which were limited markets, and they were clearly stated that they were never declared. Either one was never declared a world device, a global device.
A global device.
This one's being declared. This one's being declared as a global device, which means it should work in most markets. But you can't buy it. That's right, but you can't buy it.
Yeah, it's a
And
small
there may
world.
be some bands like Joel was talking about the Verizon bands. I think certain bands are probably not going to be carried across the world, but there you go.
Yeah, but now, so Oppo says, and I quote, the Find N5 will not be launching in Europe. Instead, in Q1 2025, we will introduce the Reno 13 series across Europe on February 24th, which is tomorrow as of this recording, offering consumers more choices with cutting edge AI features and stylish trend forward design. Stay tuned for the updates.
Yeah, I don't think people are going to care about that too much.
Nobody wants the I don't care how slick the Reno 13 looks. All right. This thing could be, it could float on its own. You may be able to do handstands on top of the doggone thing, and nobody's going to care.
Well, good for us.
They want the Find N5. It's supposed to be a thinner device than the Find N3.
It looks like a gorgeous device, even with the camera limitations. I want one.
Yeah.
I want one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Oppo and OnePlus, if you're listening, get your stuff together, please, and give us the N5.
We have money ready to hand over to you. You don't even have to hold a gun to us. We'll give it to you.
Yes. Yeah. Shut up.
We're happy to take it.
Shut up and take my money.
Shut up and take my money, please.
Yeah.
It really is.
Anyway.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move us to our Windows segment, but I'm going to go ahead and do that right after this brief message. Hi, this is Christopher Spera from iTechGear.org. I wanted to talk with you today about becoming a contributing donor to the site. iTechGear.org has been around for almost 15 years. In fact, our anniversary is just around the corner on January 10th, 2025. 15 years. Where has the time gone? I mean, I've never really asked for any kind of donations for the site. It's always been about me providing value to you, a site visitor or podcast listener. The iTechGear Weekly is now in its 4th year of production, and Chris G, Joel, and Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin and I are having a really great time providing you with some of the best free tech talk available from time-tested original internet writers, testers, site founders, and professional writers and editors on the internet. I truly believe that our crew has some of the best and most qualified pundits and commentators on the internet today. And we're not hobbled by any kind of sponsorship or affiliated relationship or other time-bought posts. It all comes from the heart. Unfortunately, times are kind of tough. And since the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 to 2023, yes, almost 3 full years, times have become increasingly difficult for small independent sites like iTechGear.org to stay afloat. I normally do this with a portion of the salary I make from the day job. But with the IT market so tight right now, it's really difficult sometimes for many to make normal household ends meet, let alone fund a site like iTechGear that might decide to bring in a buck or two. It ain't easy. If you find any of our content on iTechGear or from ITGW to be of any value at all, I would seriously appreciate you donating as little as just $1 to the cause. While we do have a Patreon site, it's hard to keep one website up, let alone 2. And since it's really only me doing the work, our Patreon site hasn't really helped us at all. If you can make a donation to the site or to the show of any amount, I'd be forever grateful. All donations will go to site maintenance, hosting, podcast hosting, and everything iTechGear related. Donations can be made to my PayPal account at chris@itechgear.org. Make a donation. we'll thank you immediately on the next ITGW episode and voice our gratitude. I want to thank you. We appreciate your consideration, time, and attention. Now let's get back to the latest iTechGear Weekly episode. And welcome back to the iTechGear Weekly episode number 122.
That's what she said.
Thank you.
What the crap?
I know it's that's awesome. So,
oh my goodness, it's something. Here we
go. Going straight to hell via HR. There you go. Anyway, so I want to get us into our Windows segment, and this one is a little bit interesting, because Chris, you and I have been pretty high on Lenovo devices lately,
and I think Larry, we've talked about it.
I always have been until this.
And unfortunately, you've been running into some problems with your
minor, but still annoying. Yeah. So I have Lenovo the Yoga, the Slim 7X, which is their ARM-based computer, and I love the thing. I thought it's been the best ARM-based computer I've worked with. It's been really solid, rock solid, done everything. And then I noticed the other day that there's a lip where you lift the cover open. And on the outside of the top, if you will, of the device, not the edge top, but the big flat surface, there's kind of a bump that's there. And I noticed the edges of that started chipping. Now the device is this kind of metallic teal blue color, and it's chipped. So now all you see is silver underneath that. It wasn't banged into, it wasn't tossed into a bag carelessly or anything like that. It just seems to have worn and started to chip at the edge as a result. Okay. So I was a little disappointed because this thing is not even a year old. And so it's only about 6 or 7 months old, actually. And I contacted Lenovo via the built-in sort of tech support that they have, the case support that they have in, the app that they build in.
Right.
And I said to them, hey, look, I'm having this problem. I realize it may or may not be covered under warranty, but I want to let you know because I think you have a quality control issue. Something has happened here. This really shouldn't happen to a device that has this age to it. It really should not happen. And I want you to be aware that you may have something you need to look into. And that's pretty much how I phrased it and what I put in there. It took a couple of days before I got a response. And then the response I got was simply, well, this isn't covered. Cosmetic damage is not covered under your warranty.
And we don't give a crap about your problem.
And I thought, okay, I understand you telling me that it's not going to be covered under the warranty, but could you at least acknowledge that I tried to present this to you? Could you please acknowledge that perhaps you have something to look into at least? No, I got nothing back from them. And that, to me, speaks volumes about their customer support. And it's not good, in my opinion. If you're going to do that, again, I didn't ask you to necessarily solve my problem. As a matter of fact, I indicated you probably couldn't do it under warranty, but you could at least acknowledge my opinion and my statement. And you didn't do that. And so I'm disappointed in the way they've handled it because it tells me that they're not really listening.
Well, even if they were going to do nothing with it, even if the guy or the person that you were talking to said, oh, geez, sir, I'm so very, very sorry. Let me take down some information from you and blah, blah. And at least at the very, very least, just shined you on.
Let us investigate or whatever.
Whatever they're going to say,
necessarily
right?
Do anything.
Right. If they do nothing and it goes no farther than the phone call that you're on, shine me, make me feel better. Right.
I just feel like this has a lot to do with where customer support has gone for a lot of products these days. And it does not make me want to buy another product from them.
Well,
it just disappoints me.
Right. You and I have been
I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Sure. You and I know that this is one of the things that you had shot out to the group here during the week. And I know you and I sort of chatted on it. With
and I should point out, I have several Lenovo devices. I have at least 3 devices from them. And in general, I've had very good luck with them. This is the first product I've had from them that really didn't live up to my expectations, and it's disappointing.
Right, and I've you and I both had the Yoga Book 9i, right?
Yep, and it's been very solid for me.
I had somehow, and I don't know how I did it. because I baby all of my stuff and keep it in cases and whatnot. But somehow, and it must have happened when my insulated and padded bag fell at one point. But I had dented the speaker bar. All right.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And I created a case with Lenovo, took a picture, uploaded it, and they said, "Ooh, oh yeah, no problem. We'll, because their warranties are very affordable, and
They are.
Offer some really really good service, right? Um, and I thought, well, okay, they're going to either give me a refurbished one or they're going to come out and replace the part, and they came out and replaced the part, right?
Yeah. The problem is I didn't buy anything warranty wise. I just have the basic,
Sure.
what it came with. But the problem now is even if I were to go back and buy the warranty, this is already a case that's in their system. They're going to say existing conditions and they're not going to cover it, I think. But the point is, even if they would, I just, again, the point isn't whether they would cover it or not. The point is their response was less than customer centric. Regardless of what they actually were going to do or not going to do for me, the response says to me that speaks how the company is going to do business, and I don't want to give them more business with that kind of.
And I wonder if that's the company or if that was just unfortunately the person that you got.
Billy Joe Bob working from home.
You know what? That
doesn't matter though. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. There's still a representative for that company. They're still speaking for the company when they say what they said.
Agreed.
And it's in writing.
Yeah.
So, okay. I mean, I just find it, again, I find it disappointing, and I'm not going to do further business. But your mileage may vary, but mine has been less than stellar with them.
Right. No, with me and my situation, they came out the next day with parts, and I sat there at my kitchen table and watched this guy, take the doggone thing apart.
Oh,
and
sure.
I'm like, well, dude, that's an amazing thing. And I'm like, look, if you can go ahead and, figure out, I'd love to be able to upgrade the SSD. And he was like, well, I'm not supposed to, but if you've got one that'll fit, while I've got the thing in pieces, we'll hook you up. And I'm like, I unfortunately didn't have the right size SSD or spacers. So we had to skip over that, but this guy was awesome. All right. And was able to help me get back up and running with a working speaker right away.
Yeah. So, yeah. I like I say, your mileage may vary. I'm just, again, not disappointed that they didn't cover it, but disappointed in how they chose to respond or
I understand
lack of response. That's all. So, these things happen. That's my rant of the week.
Yeah. Well, and moving on to another sort of rant. This one, this next article, I saw this and it was really, really interesting to me because not that Surface has ever been on the ragged, hairy, cutting, bleeding edge of anything, at least not since the introduction of Windows 8 and some of the things that it did with those early form factors. Because honestly, the size may have changed, but the form factor really hasn't.
No, it hasn't.
For Surface or even Surface Laptop. And Zach
pretty much since the Surface 3. The Surface Pro 3 is about when it's been about the same.
Right. The Surface Pro 3, once it hit that 3x2 sort of, it kind of set there and that was back in, I want to say 2014, 2015, something like that.
Maybe even slightly before.
2016.
Okay, fair enough.
2016, because anyway, the long and the short of it is this. All right. Zach Bowden, like I said, put this article out, and he's saying that Microsoft's Surface is all about maintaining the Windows ecosystem health and sticking to the status quo, meaning what you see is what you ain't going to get anything innovative. You ain't going to get anything that's,
And I would argue they're always slightly
polished.
behind on the chip that's in it. They're always slightly behind on a lot of
Right.
things.
They have never been innovative.
No.
They've built a quality machine, kept the bloatware off mostly.
Mostly.
And it feels good. It's the closest thing in Windows to a MacBook. It really for the laptop anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, and what this article is basically saying is, I hope you like what you're getting, because that's what you got, and that's all.
Yeah, they can't compete with people like Lenovo and the 9i and things.
No.
They can't do that. They just not build it for themselves.
I'm wondering, do they actually build their own devices, or do they technically kind of OEM them?
Somebody builds them for them, but
you know this.
because they're not a hardware manufacturer in that sense at all,
and they never have been. All right.
Yeah. And their stuff always seems to sell in much smaller lots than other things.
It does. And there's very few folks out there that will grab. There may be Surface laptops at home, but but the Surface line, whether it is the Pro or the laptop or the Surface Book or as opposed to the Pro or the what should have been the Surface Book 4, but turned out to be the what the hell do they call this damn thing? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
The Surface Laptop Pro.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm sorry, Surface Laptop Studio.
Studio, right. Thank you. So the long and the short of it, though, you aren't going to see anything slick and cool like the Laptop Studio again anytime soon. What you're going to see is consistency and the status quo out of Microsoft Surface. And I think they may even go ahead and just reel some of that stuff in, just stick with the Surface.
Well, I was going to say
the Surface laptop, and that might be
the original goal was to sort of set reference models that people could sort of try to look at.
They were the signature PCs that made it all turn around, right?
And they
to set the record straight on who builds them. Dr. Google has just informed me that the Surfaces are built in several large facilities across the entire globe, not just China, but China's one of them.
That doesn't surprise me.
And they're totally supervised facilities by Microsoft employees. They have Microsoft executives there.
Oh.
They do it kind of like Tim Cook does it. I would have thought somebody like HP or someone. No, not them.
A no name OEM.
These are just
HTC was to iMate and whatnot during the Pocket PC days,
or something like a TSMC or something like they're doing. Somebody like that, doing that. But fair enough.
Evidently, they have their own plans.
Okay, fair enough.
Well,
fair enough.
I never knew that, but
I didn't either.
No,
we learned something new. Even at our age, guys, we can learn new stuff.
Yes, these old dogs can learn some new tricks, but don't get picky, would you please?
And don't expect us to do it regularly.
And stay off my freaking lawn.
And get off my lawn.
Especially right after I mowed it.
Yeah, there you go.
So, now, however, I want to now to the fun and games, kids. Now to the fun and games. I want to go ahead and I want to have Brother Joel pull out the big wheel and give it a spin. So, Brother Joel.
Yeah.
And this week, it's the Amazon Mistake-a-thon.
Yeah, we have a new Mistake-a-thon.
Yeah,
because one was not enough for us.
No. Well, I don't. Given all that goes on here at the iTechGear Weekly, one is never enough. So this week, apparently, Amazon is changing how you can download Kindle books.
Yeah.
So, Chris, what the heck?
Well, so this is primarily for actual Kindle users more than anything else. And what was able, if I understood correctly, because I was not primarily a Kindle user, I was a Kindle app user on other platforms. You basically could, if you needed to, you could dump your books down onto your computer and then reload them up if you needed to at some point. the good thing about this was there have been times where Amazon has gotten rid of a title. It's happened more than once, and it was nice to be able to, as long as you had the book, you could continue to use the book. You just couldn't download it from Amazon anymore. So if you had backed up your books to your computer, you could theoretically, keep your library functional. That feature is going away, apparently. You will not be able to do that anymore.
Well, isn't that just special?
Yeah.
I have an actual feeling that their main reason they're doing this is I have friends who have bought Kindle books and done this, and then you can run it through a program and strip off the DRM and use it on devices other than Kindles.
And that's been the commentary I've heard before as well, Joel, is why they're going there. And from a business perspective, I get it, but you've been running this way for years and years and years and years. And now you're deciding to change that, and it doesn't look good from a customer service perspective, because people no longer have a way to back it up. And that just says that you don't own this stuff, that really all you're doing is you have right to use. That's all you've got. And that's unfortunate, because, and so they're telling people, the recommendation we're getting from the article that we've linked, and among others, is that if you have stuff on your Amazon Kindle right now, back it up now. You're okay if you back it up now, but you won't be able to do it in the future.
Right. And I think it's like, what, the 25th or so, or something like that?
I'm trying to remember the exact 26th. 26th. It's very soon. 26th. It's only a few more days. So call us our PSA, if you will. We're basically, we agree, if you have them, back them up so you're protected. Do not steal them. Just, we're not recommending you steal them. We're recommending you back them up so you can restore them to your Kindle if you were to lose a title for whatever reason.
Correct. So
unfortunately, that I would say a lot of these companies are going to go this way. This is not going to be an unusual move. I doubt it'll be in isolation. I see more of this. So
no, I think you're seeing it not only here, but you're seeing it everywhere. I was looking into a new Dymo label printer. Their newest label printers, you absolutely must use their paper. Oh, that's it. There's nothing will work. Nothing. It just says, sorry, can't print.
Which
people are screaming.
Not cool from my perspective. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm getting really annoyed with this.
You said it right. You're going to see a lot of that.
This whole forcing us to a service or a subscription or whatever is just driving me nuts. But they're all doing it. There's no question. They're all doing it. So here we go.
Bite the bullet, because you have to if you want it.
But to us, once again, this adds into the mistake-a-thon.
Agree.
So
it is unfortunate, and what are you going to do?
Well, you could stop buying the product. That's what you could do.
That's the only thing that you could do.
You could use Apple Books or Google Books or something else if you want.
Right now, this is going to affect Kindle hardware. This is not necessarily going to affect Kindle software.
Okay, right? And let's be honest, in Kindle software, you didn't tend to download your material from there anyway.
Correct.
That wasn't the model. So
correct. So, but for those wanting to know, well, what's the difference? Kindle hardware again is you go and you buy a Kindle device directly from Amazon, right? The Kindle software may be okay on your iPad or on your iPhone or on your Android phone
or browser. You can do it a bunch of ways.
Browser, on your Windows tablet or laptop or whatever, and you can open up the screen and you can read a book there on your device of choice. It doesn't.
True.
It doesn't. This issue doesn't affect those other areas. It's just on your Kindle hardware. So it's going to be basically you're going to stream your ebook. All right, effectively. So it's going to download while parts of it will download while you read, and as you move forward in the book, you'll continue to download in the background just those sections that you're reading, and you'll read from that cache, and that's it. Unfortunate, but true. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move us to our tip of the week segment. And again, before we get here, I want to remind everybody that, again, iTechGear was founded on the principle that we really want to make technology easy for everyone to use and understand. And this team, this august group of usual suspects, has dedicated their writing careers, yay, their lives, to this specific purpose. And every week, therefore, iTechGear Weekly will feature a computing tip authored by one of our most experienced editors. And if you have questions, concerns, comments, requests,
I have a few. No.
Keep them to yourself.
Thank you. You can keep those to yourself. Thank you. But if you really want to get your 15 seconds worth of fame over here, go ahead and send those ideas directly to tips@itechgear.org. And if we use your suggestion, we will give you the credit where credit is due. I want to go ahead and I keep on looking at our download stats and whatnot, and how much we are, how many views we've got now for a very, the site's been around for about 15 years, and for the amount of time that it's been around without any serious advertising or serious promotion, I mean, we get somewhere in the neighborhood of around 30 to 50 folks a day, unique visits a day, right? From folks. And while somebody's going to go, well, geez, that's all, Chris, that's all. Hey, you try to go ahead and do this, on your own without any kind of advertising budget at all. All right. To see that it picking up and you're hitting, consistently 30, 35, 50.
Well, and they're staying with you.
And
That's
you're
what's
staying,
interesting.
and it's consistent. Is interesting.
And we thank all of you, by the way. We really do.
We do. All right. So it's not too bad. And again, Brother Joel is on top with some of the most great writing that he has. Your Presto Dorothy cold brew coffee maker review, by the way, is one of the most popular articles on the site. So,
or a device I don't even use anymore.
Right. Yeah. But I want to go ahead and I want to bring up a something that has, since I published this about 3 years ago, this particular how-to has consistently gotten steady views from week to week to week. And I say that because it's obviously providing some level of value. If you've got a Mac, all right, and you've got a printer that's connected to your Mac, and you want to be able to turn off duplex because for whatever reason you don't, you've got to have your documents on, one sheet on one piece of paper, and you can't print on both sides, or you've got teachers that are very picky about that because they want to be able to mark up your papers or whatever it is, your homework, with markers that may bleed through, and then they can't read what there is on the other side of the page. This is going to help you turn off duplex printing on your Mac by default, right? So I'm going to include a link to this article, but there are and there's about 8 or so steps here, excuse me, to this particular thing that you start off by turning on the cups control panel in from terminal, and then you surf to a local cups page, or cups is basically a interface for dealing with your printer. All right, and it comes standard on every Mac. Once you get there, all right, I've got specific shots, screenshots, as well as instructions, and it's broken down very, very succinctly to give you, like one step with a screenshot to show you what's going on, and then the next step with the subsequent screenshot to show you what's going on and where you click. Snagit is a wonderful thing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that out there again for you guys. If you've got a Mac, it may Cups has changed just a little bit since this has been out there in the last 2-3 years. but it's going to be relatively the same, although there may be some slight differences, but it still should get you there.
Let me throw something else out there for you, Chris.
Sure.
If you have a Hewlett-Packard printer and you have installed the Hewlett-Packard drivers, this is unnecessary. Because within the Hewlett-Packard drivers, the duplex on and off is pretty much, it'll retain your last status, whatever you did.
It will. I can confirm that.
In the Hewlett-Packard drivers.
HP,
if you have any other kind of generic printers, it may not. What Chris is telling you will help you potentially quite a bit. But if you have a Hewlett-Packard printer with your Mac, it's pretty much already baked into their drivers. You don't need it doesn't even use cups directly. It just uses the Hewlett-Packard interface to drive it. So yeah, it's kind of a different animal, but that's kind of want to be aware. So take a look at what kind of printer you have. If you have pretty much anything other than Hewlett-Packard, you might want to look at this. But if you have a Hewlett-Packard, make sure you install the latest Hewlett-Packard drivers. It will help you.
Yep.
Very true. I do want to say that I've got a Canon printer. And
exactly.
This is something that I know is somewhat problematic. Every time I love this printer, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, and I don't know why, every time the computer restarts, it may not necessarily keep all the definitions and settings for the printer.
I would agree with you.
Then you've got to go ahead and you've got to yank the printer out because it won't print, and then you've got to reinstall the printer. And every time you do that, it wipes out the settings. So
I would argue historically for me, again, Hewlett-Packard's done a really good job with Mac drivers and consistently done a good job with them. I would not say that that's true across the board for other manufacturers. Right. And Cups has been a really good way to get.
Right.
It kind of gets around some of those problems. But what your instructions are, Chris, are really useful if you have a driver that's less than cooperative. Absolutely.
And good way to put it.
And unfortunately, this may be depending on where I am with the ink or the toner, the color toner for this. I may be tossing this printer. The last time that I had to buy toner for this was a few years ago. But the long story short, I think it's now to a point where Canon printers will not work with anything with third-party toner cartridges. Don't even bother with
HP's trying real hard to do that too.
Yeah, they are. They really are.
Unfortunately, the toner for this particular printer was over $800. The last time I bought it, the printer
laser printer.
The printer in and of itself is only like $350 when I bought it. All right. Yeah. And so it's not buy a new printer.
I just replaced all of mine. I know the drill.
Buy a new printer. You'll get toner and it'll be cheaper.
Well, it won't, but it often won't be a very
smaller cartridges.
It'll be the
smaller
demo
cartridges.
toner.
Yeah, but you're not going to spend almost $1,000 buying replacement toner.
Yeah, I don't spend that for my HP color jet.
No,
I don't. I don't spend that kind of money.
So I may be looking at a different printer depending on how long these cartridges will last. So we'll see. Anyway, but that's our tip of the week for this. This is a very good way of taking care of this on your Mac if you don't have a standardized driver that will work right.
Guys, we're here to help catch it.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to go ahead and move us to our pick of the week segment.
Are you?
I am. And hey,
good for you.
Our picks. Our show picks are typically hardware, software, and other items of interest that we have, basically just individually purchase and actually use, and we like enough that we want to go ahead and recommend them to you, our steady, growing listener base, and we love you all so much. These are not paid advertisements or any items that we have any kind of affiliated marketing relationship with. If that were true, the editorial policy over at iTechGear.org says, hey, we have to go ahead and notify you guys of that relationship up front. But these are just things that we sincerely believe in and want to bring you at the end of each show. Why?
Because we
like you.
That's right. There we
We're
go.
Getting better.
Well, when I point, you guys gotta when I point. Anyway.
Just listen to the theme song, guys, just once, please.
That's right.
Theme song?
And listen to the rhythm of it. Come on, kids.
Yeah. Anyway, so this week, Larry, you've got the pick. And what have you got for us?
I have for us this week one of those rare purchases that we all buy occasionally. You look at it, you hold it, and you say, how in the hell did they make this for only $17? Talking about an aluminum stand for the Mac, the new M4 Mac Mini. The new M4 Mac Mini is truly flying off the shelves. I was told at my local Apple store, they can't even keep them in stock. They literally are being sold that quick. Partly, I think it's because so many folks who have previous Mac Minis are very happy with them. They use them with a monitor, and they want to upgrade to one now that has AI. So not that the old one was bad, but the new M4 supports all of Apple Intelligence.
And it's an M4 under the hood.
Right, it's an M4. Right. And partly another reason I think is because this is still Apple's least expensive, but one of its most powerful Macs. But without getting into a review of the M4 Mac Mini, which you may see on the site someday soon, I hope. I will say that it is my fourth Mac Mini over the years. I've had others at the same time, obviously MacBooks and Airs, and I absolutely love it. There are two minor issues that have always irritated me about this one, the power button. And we've talked about this on the show before. The power button is on the bottom corner edge, and it forces me to kind of pick up that corner to power it on and off. Not a big deal, but I rarely restart my Mac, probably 3 or 4 times a year. But the M4 also throws out a little bit of warm air on the underside. It's got a little fan in it. It's not noisy. You never hear it. But mine anyways, is as much as you can put in it. It's a powerful machine. And it's just, so this stand serves two purposes. There's a little hole in it in the bottom once you set your Mac on it. And by the way, it fits so perfectly. And the color match on the aluminum is exactly like Cupertino would have built it. This should have been an Apple product. There's a little hole I can press, turn the button, or push the button on and off, plus the air of about an inch spacer underneath it lets that air circulate throughout the thing. It doesn't burn a hole in my desk. So basically, it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And also, like my microphone that I'm using, the cable can go back underneath that and then plug in behind the Mac Mini. So it's an aesthetic thing as well. Absolutely an Apple-esque product in all ways. Quality, the silver coating I mentioned, the feet and the mount area for the Mac have that real thin silicone padding.
Oh,
nice.
And
it's just exactly like you'd think Apple would make it. So again, I don't know how they make this for $17, but Amazon has it. The link is on our show notes. If you have a Mac Mini and you have $17, get
the M4. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I gotta tell you, we were talking about this a little bit in the pre-show. I've got a very good friend of mine who's about to buy a Mac Mini M4, and I'm in the process of looking at considering upgrading my mother's from an M1 to an M4 Mac Mini.
I got,
and I'll tell you what,
too, yep.
This is going to be on my gotta have list as part of those purchases. I got to tell you. So I'm really glad the timing for me perfect. It was perfect, Larry. So I appreciate you bringing this one up.
Beautiful little product, and so is the Mac, the M4 is great computer. That's it.
Well, that's an awesome pick. I'll tell you that right now.
I agree.
If you're looking for a stand for your M4 or M4 Pro Mac Mini, this is it, kids.
Yeah.
you're going to have a hard time finding anything better at the price, if at all possible. So, all right. Well, this has been the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 122.
That's what she said.
Thank you. Recorded live Sunday, February 16th, 2025, live from iTechGear Central. As I
Thanks.
said,
now I need my meds.
and for Mr. Chris Gavula, Brother Joe McLaughlin, and Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin, I want to say, hey, we will see you next time.